Welcome, one and all. Welcome, one and all. Lockdown hobby time, day 30. We've got the magnificent Hellfane out once again, and it's actually the body of it is completed, apart from a very small step which I'm going to do first, which is I've already matte varnished this whole thing, but there are a couple of areas that have a little bit of a shine to them, so I'm going to apply a tiny bit more matte varnish to those regions. And then we're going to be working on the crew, who happen to be seated here. And I've not done much on them so far. You can see, though, we get him right up there. What's the optimal focus point for him? There you go. I've already bronzed up some of the hideous skull decorations on them, and some of the gold work is underway. But plenty to do on the crew. Only 3 of them, though, so it should be a fairly quick process compared to this absolute gargantuan beastie. And we've got Russell and Graham already in the chat. Good evening. Okay, let's dive into this head on then. So, on the wet palette, first things first, a bit more of the old matte varnish on the beast itself. I'm kind of glad the webcam doesn't give you a true look at this thing, because the light's a little bit weird on it, because that'll save the grand reveal of precisely how everything looks in natural daylight for the photos at the end. Oh, just need to lower my chair as well. There we go. That's always an exciting moment in the show. Okay, anti-shine matte varnish. Do your magic. Let's give it a good shake. We've got Sean in here as well. Russell says, my eyes get all fuzz looking at these heretic dwarves. Well, if you're a true dwarf enthusiast, then I can imagine that would be the case. I think that might be a sneeze coming on. Okay, it was just one sneeze, so that's nice. And then, of course, hand sanitized because of these times we're living in. Not that there's all kinds of people coming through my house touching things, but best to be safe anyway. We've got Steve in the chat as well now. Right then, let's get not too fine a brush because it's unnecessary for this step. Just going to tilt it into the light so I can see exactly which points are still a little bit shiny, and then dab a bit of the anti-shine varnish onto them, because we don't want it to be shiny. Any shine on this thing is going to be provided by the paint, the colours, to give the illusion of shine, not actual shine. So anywhere that's still a teensy bit shiny looking, just going to dab a little bit of this on. Usually it doesn't take much more work than this to get rid of all the shine. If there's still a bit after this coat's dry, I can always put more on again. But you don't want to go in too thick with it, so you've got to be careful. But for anyone who missed the first few seconds, this beast is actually complete now. We just need to paint the crew to go on it. And then take pictures, and then await for the judgment of the masses to decide whether it's worthy of praise or not. Praise or scorn. You're never truly sure whether you've pulled off the effect that you're going for until it's all finished and assembled and put together. Sometimes the individual components might look amazing, and then when you put them together you realise there's some weird colour clash or something. So you can never be certain. Anything else with an unnatural kind of shine to it that needs prodding with the anti-shine varnish. What's everyone up to tonight? We've also got Brad in the chat as well. There's a couple of things I'm going to talk about during this video, unless the conversation is steered by the audience towards something different, in which case I don't need to waste those topics on this one. But there are a couple of things I want to discuss over the course of the next hour or 90 minutes, or however long this lasts. If this was a truly professional setup, then I could plan out exactly how long each video would last. And start at the same time every night would be nice as well. Probably not the same time every night. For optimal start time would probably be once a week at the same time. So every day you tend to turn some people away from the channel because they don't want to see a video every single day. I know I've unsubscribed from channels because they upload too much, because it just fills up the subscription page. But I'm not really chasing a vast audience these days. Just trying to do my part to keep up the community spirit during these turbulent times, man. Okay, so we'll put this beastie to one side. We've got Bazooka in the chat, who's changed his name recently, I noticed. Russell says, your painting's gotten a lot better, Andy. Well, I hope it has, because I've been at it a long time. And I can definitely see progression. If I compare the Abyssal Dwarves to any of my previous armies, I think these look far superior. I think there's another sneeze coming on, and I'm going to turn off the little camera this time so you can't actually see it. And you won't be able to hear it either. Okay, so Steve is putting finishing touches to a regiment of long axe. That's a hefty number of orcs you've been working on recently. Really, I think my painting, it was never going to get to the top level because there's certain techniques that I don't even attempt that are required if you want to reach that stage. But it is improving because I attempt more things. My painting's always been neat and tidy and clean, at least since I started the hobby again, like 8 years ago. But I think adding more steps to painting is quite an important thing, rather than just being able to use ridiculously advanced techniques. Just taking more time over it and adding extra highlights, that type of thing. Brad says, what happened with the microphone yesterday? Did something happen with the microphone yesterday? I think the day before yesterday, the microphone died for the last 10 minutes of the broadcast. But yesterday, I think it was fine. And I'm keeping an eye on the little audio bar in the streaming software so I can see that it's actually jumping up whenever I speak. Because there was an issue with that the other day. Graham is working on a long-legged demon beastie, or has finished one, and will take pictures tomorrow. So, let's get the crew out, shall we? So, we're running out of space over here because I've put the second monitor in, and I need to raise it up a bit so there's actually space for things to sit. Okay, let's put him up here out of the way for now. think he's looking pretty sweet, but he's only going to be half a beast, really, without his crew. So the next step on the crew is I've already done the second application of Glorious Gold. However, I was looking at this guy from some weird angles, and I spotted a few areas where there's just no paint on him at all, like right under his helmet. So I think I'm going to put some... Have I got some Glorious Gold already on the palette? Doesn't look like there's any wet stuff on there. So a bit more Glorious Gold into a couple of the crevices that were missed. And then I can put some wash into them later. So let's have this brush. Just wiggling it around within the crevice there. And anywhere else I didn't catch last time. Or with the airbrush. A little bit back there. Okay, looks good. So let's have the polished gold, so I can do the edge highlights. So I'm going to go for a bit of a finer brush because these guys are only small. We're not dealing with huge monstrous armor plates anymore, we're just dealing with tiddly little person-sized details now. So what's the tiniest cheap brush I've got? Because I don't really like to do metallics with a Citadel fine detail brush, because it seems like a one-way ticket to ruined Brush Town. Not even a first-class ticket though, like second-class ticket. Polished gold, time for some edge highlights, which of course, as you'll know from the other beast, isn't the final highlight stage with my Abyssal Dwarf gold recipe, but the edge highlights are an important aspect of it. Steve is really enjoying the orcs right now, getting as many done as possible while in the mood. Yep, that's the way to do it. When you're in the mood for painting, you just got to dive in with both feet and get as much done as you can. If you're anything like me, and you go through periods where you're not really that interested in painting, sometimes I'll go a few weeks without painting anything. When you've got the motivation, you have to grab it by the horns and squeeze as much life out of it as you can. To decide which other parts of this thing are going to be different colours. I know there's going to be some silver, there's a couple of like chains and pipes and that kind of stuff that I'm going to pick out in other colours, but the certain parts of the weapon I'm not 100% sure on yet. Have to make some tough decisions there. Painting's usually slower when I haven't got a plan. When I know what I'm doing, I can just fly into it on autopilot. I'm actually having to think about these guys. But now that I've seen what the actual Hellfane itself looks like, complete, I know which colours are going to been required here. For example, I've gone for the bronze on all the little skull decorations on these guys because it matches what I've done on the big beastie. And that's not 100% unique colour in the army, but there isn't much of it out there. There's only a little bit on the Greater Obsidian Golem, I think. And the copper colour on the pipes is definitely unique to this unit. So I may put some copper onto these guys as well. These two crewmen here have actually got their orange skirts started already. So there is going to be some orange represented in there. That's pretty much the only visible kind of fabric on the entire model. This guy doesn't have any on him really. So one thing I've been pondering for a little while now is trying to find models to represent all the heroes from Vermintide. But it's not proving to be that easy because I don't think any of them are based on one specific model in the range. There are obviously models for witch hunters, but is there one that looks exactly like the one in the game? I haven't been able to find one. It's fairly similar to, I suppose, the witch hunter from Warhammer Quest back in the day has a very similar outfit and hat. But his posture isn't really that in keeping with him. And there have been a lot of witch hunter models, many of which are out of production. I need to look through old Mordheim models probably. There might be some useful ones in that range. But if anyone knows of any specific hero models that look incredibly close to the characters from Vermintide, then let me know because I would be interested in getting my hands on them. Whether you actually own them or whether you just know of their existence, then let me know. Because I'd be very interested in recreating that on the tabletop. But I'm not going to go out and buy a ton of rats to use for it until I've actually got the heroes nailed down. So I think it'd be a fun project. Most of the Skaven are quite well represented. Many of them are based on models, obviously. The Rattling gun is a bit of a tricky one because the actual Rattling gunner in the game, in Vermintide, looks way better than the model of a Rattling gun. Like, vastly better. The Poison Wind Globadier is a pretty accurate representation. Chilling Wargamers in the house. I assume that's going to be Spud. Looking to pick up some Abyssal Dwarf painting tips, no doubt. From a painting legend like me. I remember Spud's original Abyssal Dwarf army back in the day with a lot of relics models used in there. A lot of the big Newham suits. Pretty sure they were being used as the lesser obsidian golems. I remember playing against them in a tournament back in the day. I think we had a draw in that game. Back before I was a Kings of War tournament legend, obviously. So I said the edge highlighting phase wouldn't take that long, but there are a lot of edges on these things. They're very detailed miniatures. I think this guy is the same model, almost the same model as the Overmaster that you get in the... Is he in one of the Vanguard sets, maybe? Not sure. But he's very similar. But if you're a company the size of, let's say, Mantic, you've got to be efficient, haven't you? I mean, GW put out kits that can make about 10 different things. So if they do it, and think how big they are, they still have to be efficient. Kings of War question: can you use models from other ranges in the Kings of War list? And could I use another Mantic product in the Kings of War list? Yes. You can pretty much use anything. I don't think Mantic have ever had a tournament where they would turn someone away for using 100% non-Mantic models. The only issue is if you're planning to win one of the top prizes at a Mantic run event, for example, a trip around the world to a tournament in another country, or a painting award at a Mantic event, then they only have the prizes open to people who have a 100% Mantic army, or close to 100%. I think it was actually 90% at Clash of Kings. And you can pretty much use any Mantic models as anything, and you'd still be eligible for all the kinds of prizes then. I think before they had any Ratkin models, I'd seen Ratkin armies that were just entirely from Dead Zone miniatures converted. I've seen... what's the other one? I think there was a really nice Herd army that may have won a painting award. Was it Herd? At one of the Clash of Kings, I feel like there was a Herd army that won an award, and all the models were Mantic, but Mantic don't have any models in that range. But they used other like creatures. Pretty sure it was Herd. So they had like goblin flea bags converted into something else, and different animals from Kings of War and Dead Zone converted into things. So if you're thinking about using some relic stuff, then go nuts, I would say, if you've still got a load left over. And there is some relics representation actually in my Night Stalker army. If you pay close attention to the back of its head, or the back of the neck area here, you can see that that is definitely an Orknar model there, the face of one at least. And there are some other relics heads on it as well. Let's see if I can find one. Definitely one there. A head right there, is it? I can't remember what model that's from. You might not be able to see it very well. Oh, wants to focus. There you go. Right here. That's from an Orknar model as well. Can't remember which model it's from. I just had some Orknar heads in a box. So took some blue stuff, molded those faces, and then stuck them on there. Newham stuff and Dead Zone Plague models. Yeah, Dead Zone Plague models are a good choice. I've seen people use them in different Kings of War armies because they're not really strictly sci-fi looking, a lot of them. They're just hideous mutated monsters. So they're quite suitable for other game systems. It could be Bjorn, the Orknar leader's head. It could be. I've still got quite a few unpainted Orknar that I plan to get round to at some point, if Relics ever actually comes back. I do have enough for a full army, obviously, since I did manage to win that tournament with Orknar, the one time I actually played them. But I've also got more of them unpainted. And if Relics comes back, I'll definitely get them on the table again. It did kind of kill my motivation a bit towards the end of Relics' lifespan, when the Orknar were made into a mercenary faction. So you weren't really supposed to run them on their own anymore, which I thought was ridiculous. Just because only a handful of people played them, apparently. And obviously Spud knows all about the Orknar. Hopefully TT Combat one day will decide, you know what, we bought this whole Relics empire, and we've not done anything with it. We're now riddled with guilt, because we've deprived people of a game system that they loved and cherished. And now we're going to just release a whole ton of new stuff, new rulebook, and we're going to get back some of that a community spirit that's been slowly dissolving over the last however many years it's been since Relics was really a big deal. Well, you could argue it was never a big deal, but to me it was. But it certainly hasn't been for the last 4 or 5 years. And TT Combat don't want to get a reputation as the system killers. So I would assume they want to do something with it eventually. If they don't want to do anything with it, give it to someone who will, instead of holding it hostage. Because it was a fun system. Yeah, Spud misses Relics. I've got a full Newham army, a full Orknar army, and a decent-ish Britannian army. A few things missing from that one. I never went near the Vatir because they were just too flimsy. And I didn't like the idea of pinning all those tiny little pieces together. So I'm not sure which parts of this hammer are going to be gold when it's finished, but I'm just going to treat it at the moment as if they're all going to be gold. All the parts. And then if I paint over it later, it's not that big of a deal. I wasn't really that into the new, I say new, but it was quite a while ago now, the new Relics race, the Cthulhu. I thought they were a bit unnecessary. Although, obviously, I have no idea what the Tor Gaming financials were like, whether they needed a new mass appeal race that would draw in some more customers. Yeah, this guy's looking nicely highlighted now. So, who's next? Bazooka started to develop an interest in relics, but was too late and they closed down. Yes, very disappointing. Warm Darkness, did you watch the movie Arizona yet? No, I haven't even looked it up yet. You know what? I'm going to look it up now. Let's see here. American dark comedy thriller film. Is that the right one? From 2 years ago? That looks way too high budget for my liking. Just at first glance. Plague Syndrome says that is a majestic beard. If you're talking about my facial hair, then that's what you have to do when you're in lockdown, isn't it? You can't shave while in lockdown unless you're some kind of deranged lunatic. Well, if that is the film you're talking about, Dwarven Darkness, then maybe I'll check it out at some point. So we go from facial hair compliments to Radbat referring to possibly me as a nerd, or maybe someone in the audience. I'll assume that's whoever's most nerdly among the audience tonight, because no one would, in their right mind, call me a nerd. I'm one of the hippest cats around, as the kids said, probably like 40 years ago. Edge highlighting. Any more gamers? Wonder if one day you could do a one-time only live show with us. Obviously, you have. I'm sure that could be arranged, Spud. Despite my A-list celebrity status, I'm sure we could figure that one out. I'm sure you can meet my current live appearance rate. Especially with your rekindled passion for the Abyssal Dwarves. And since I am officially the Abyssal Dwarf Master, since the UK rankings have kind of closed down with me at the #1 slot for the Abyssal Dwarf race, can't really argue with the stats. Some would even say I am an Abyssal Dwarf god. I, of course, wouldn't say that because I am very humble. But it has been claimed by others. Although I haven't actually won a tournament with the Abyssal Dwarves yet. To be fair, it's pretty much just been one person winning all the tournaments so far this season. So we'll see how that changes when the tournament scene restarts again. Whether that's this year or next year remains to be seen. Got to be responsible about this. I haven't been taking part in any Universal Battle tournaments, even though I'm aware that several have taken place and are ongoing. Just not something that really interests me. I want to play with the miniatures on the table, which is why this Wednesday, unless there's some issues, something goes wrong, I've got my first over the webcam based Kings of War game coming up with two of my armies against each other, but of course someone else is going to be controlling one of them. And I'm going to take pictures of that and turn it into one of my regular battle reports. So we're kind of getting back to some level of normality in the world there, and it'll feel like the world has returned to its old self again when the battle reports are back. There's not as much gold armour on this guy as his boss. There are some bits that are going to be picked out in black, other parts in orange. And they'll obviously need highlighting as well. Pistol, I think, does that want to stay gold? I'll assume it's going to be gold for now, and I'll itch highlight that. If I change my mind, I can just paint over it. Got little teeth on the pistol, of course. I like how it's not completely departed from the old style of Abyssal Dwarves, because a lot of those guys have, if you look at the Decimators, the old Decimators, they have kind of the same thing going on with the little like dragon head gun. Let's see, does it want to focus on that, or is it too tiny? Let's give it no choice. There you go. Lovely. Okay, onto his mate. Nerd equals cool, apparently. I'll accept that then. Yes, but a couple of private jets worth should do it. So the game I've got arranged, hopefully on Wednesday, is going to be Abyssal Dwarves versus Undead. And my opponent asked me to make the Undead list as well, even though he's going to be playing it. So I tried to throw in as much of the current cheese as possible based on what I've read online. So you're going to see some Revenant Cavalry Hordes, which is supposed to be the absolute filth right now. Put two of those in the list. And I'm going to be trying out my new Abyssal Dwarf models, the Grotesques. It's going to be 1,500 points. So I can't fit everything I've got in there, but I'm definitely going to use the new stuff because it's new and shiny. And that's what I prioritise. So on Wednesday, it's possible that there won't be a live painty time because I'll have all the cameras and whatnot set up for the game. We shall see. Tomorrow is Tuesday, so you know, of course, it's going to be the Andy and Rem show again. The highlight of the week. with such legendary segments as What the Hell Is That? And Nerd Confessions, and million or billion-dollar ideas, depending how good they are. Right, so all of them are Blackbeard, yes. Well, it doesn't look that black when it's finished. A lot of them look grey. But all my Abyssal Dwarves have the same beard colour. I don't know if it's just the natural colour of their beards, or whether when they join the evil ranks of the Abyssal Dwarves that they have to go through a beard dyeing ceremony, or whether the evil magic swirling around, being around that so much, corrupts beard hair follicles. Who knows? Let's just say it's magic. Yes, but send me a message when you've raised the sufficient millions for my appearance fee, and we'll get negotiating. I'll obviously need my own private dressing room. So I'm not sure what these staffs are that these two guys are holding up. Don't know if they're supposed to be weapons, because you can't really reach anything with them from up there. Or whether they're magic pokey sticks to tell the giant lava rhino that they're riding on which way to move. They are quite pokey. You'd imagine hanging over the edge of the beast with that thing and giving it a quick poke with these spiky sides here. I don't know whether it would actually be able to feel it, since it's made of rock. You'd probably melt your hand off trying. Yeah, I think we're almost done with this guy now. With this colour, anyway. So if I had to predict when the Hellfane would be completely finished, it would be tomorrow at this stage. I think I should be able to get it done completely by then, which will include the crew being stuck on it. And then, with any luck, tomorrow night I'll be able to take the pictures of the completed beast in all its glory. And it felt very daunting when I started painting it, just because it's so huge and fat. But it has been fun. And hopefully it's been informative for the audience as well. So obviously I don't normally go into this much detail when describing my painting adventures. Like you've been able to see every second of the journey, apart from the occasional step that I did off camera just because it was tedious. You don't need to see absolutely every waking moment. You've seen all the steps, though. You've had a taste of everything. You've been able to sink your ravenous fangs into the tender, succulent painting step goodness. Allowing all that residue to dribble down your chin. Well, of course, the majority of it is being absorbed by your mind. Okay. Go Go Gadget Hammer. Steve has still got a winged slasher to paint. Well, big stuff. I'm finding that a lot of fun to paint at the moment. Big models, so I'm looking forward to sinking my teeth into this bad boy. Actually, if I hold it there, you can actually see the whole thing in one shot. It's taller than my head, is it? Almost. What a magnificently hideous creature, shall we say. Can't just call it magnificent. Magnificently foul and vile and nightmarish. Can't really use the word grotesque anymore since I actually own some grotesques. So, what do we do now? I'll leave that to dry for a couple of moments. Let's have a look and see if Mr. Hellfane is shine free yet. There's a couple of little spots I could put some more anti-shine varnish on, so I think I'm going to do that now. And thankfully, none of the yellow wash that causes the kind of lava crackles, none of that has been washed away really by the varnish because it just turns to white when that happens. So occasionally I'll have to reapply a bit, but it looks like it's pretty intact. Because the anti-shine matte varnish is pretty potent stuff and it can eat through very thin washes if you're not careful, especially if you apply it and then start sliding it around with the brush and stroking it about the place. Got to be careful with it. Just soaping off this brush first. Don't want any gold residue on it. Steve normally hates doing big models. Well, I used to just be intimidated by painting the big juicy stuff. But I think the turning point, first of all, it was the Mortis engine. And I was very pleased with how that came out. In fact, let's have a look at the Mortis engine and get pictures of up of all my big models, I think, here. Let's see. Get rid of everything from the image slideshow. And put some good stuff in there. Let's see. I'll find all the big models that I've done, really. You can track the progress between them. Only going to take a second. Every single miniature picture I have on my computer is under a folder called Dwarfs. And that's because when I was getting back into the hobby, I was only going to do dwarfs. That was the only army I had plans for. So everything else ended up going in that folder with them. Okay, let's find a nice picture of the Mortis engine to put in here. How about those ones? Then we'll get a picture of the Star Drake. Which obviously came later. The Star Drake was just before the Caradron Overlords came out, I think. What's a nice picture of that? Let's go with those ones. And what else have I painted that's large? There's the Abyssal Dwarf Big Flying Beastie as well, so let's stick that one in here as well. There's also the Greater Obsidian Golem, which I suppose counts as a very big beastie. Okay, so let's get this image slideshow up here. There we go. So, Mortis Engine, this is a bit of an old picture, but it was staring at me for a long time, this model, before I actually went ahead and painted it. It was sat on the desk for a very long time, in fact. I painted it in two parts. I painted the top, like, carriage part of it separately from the ghosts. And some text in the book there. That was probably the first time I did something like that, which I think looks pretty cool with the yellowy effect there. And that's just a yellow shade with most of it wiped off with my finger while it was still wet. And there's the ghosts. I did quite a bit of dry brushing on the ghosts and airbrushing as well. Combination of those two techniques. And the Star Drake, of course, is a massive creature. It may be the most expensive model that I've ever painted. It's an absolute monstrous creature indeed. Airbrushing on the wings. Lots of washes and dry brushing again. Nothing too horrendously complicated. And I think it looks pretty damn sweet. Then the Greater Obsidian Golem. By this point I was doing different things with metal. You can see there's silver on there, on the gold, adding a bit of shine, whereas with this guy it's just different shades of gold. And some crystals up there which made it extra spicy, and I think I'd got the golem rock painting technique that I used. I think it was looking pretty sweet by this point. But again, it's dry brushing and washes, and then this guy is probably my favourite model that I've finished so far. Really like the orange scales on there, and I think the black parts, even though there's not much that's gone into the black areas, they still work. I like the face, I like the wings, they look nice and kind of, it's almost leathery looking, and I think this might be one of my favourite angles here, because you can see the orange scales very well. The actual model itself is kind of annoying to put together because that whole saddle and monster head area is all metal and the rest of it's plastic, so it's very, very heavy at the front and not so much at the back. So it's just going to fall over. I like this angle. It makes it look very nice. Lots of strategic highlighting and washes going on those scales. On the orange ones anyway. The black ones are just dry brushed and then a Nuln Oil wash over it to tone it back, which is the same thing I do for rocks. And that's the end of that. So, big models. There's my history of them, in terms of the ones that I'm proud of anyway. There's a couple of others that I've worked on that are just very simple looking, so it's not really worth looking at those. Okay, let's do some more anti-shine varnish on this gargantuan creature. This titanic monstrosity. This enormous thing. So where are you still looking a bit shiny, old buddy? No, it doesn't have to look 100% flat and reflectionless, but I want to get it as much as possible to be matte. At least on the rock parts. If there's a little bit of shiny area on the metal, that's not that big of a deal, really. Okay, anyone else got a bit of unnatural shine here? Let's see. Oh, it's a little bit under there, and we don't want that. Okay. I think I'm happy with that. Oh, just a tiny bit there. Right, so let's put it into one side. Steve says, I love the Winged Half-Breed, my favourite Kings of War model. I really like that model as well. I really dislike it in dragon form. I don't really like the dragon's head on it. I think it looks a bit too small for the rest of it, almost. But I think with the Ancient Winged Half-Breed upgrade, the head looks just about right. I think the proportions look much better on it, and makes the dragon body come to life, I think. It might be one of my favourite Kings of War models as well, just in general, and it's definitely my favourite one that I've painted. So what next? I think I'm going to get a tiny little brush out and start working on the beards. Or before that, I suppose I could apply some Reclin Flesh Shade onto the orange that I've done. So let's do that first, and then while that's drying I can work on the beards. I'm going to put a wash over the orange and then highlight it up from there. Steve's painted quite a few big miniatures over the years, but hasn't really enjoyed them. Well, we all go through that a bit, don't we? Very few people like painting everything, and you usually have to get through at least one thing that you don't like in order to get to the juicy stuff that you do like. Because you need to have a balanced army. Nowadays, I like painting the big stuff more than I like painting the basic troops, I think. But in the past, it was very different. I used to really like having just a production line of simple miniatures to work on. But now I like painting the more exciting things. I think it's because I'm just better at painting now, or at least that's how it seems. And I feel like I can do a better job on the big stuff now, whereas the small models don't usually give you that much to work with. These ones certainly do. But if we're talking like the mantic plastic goblins, there's not a lot going on there. Not much detail really to work with. I haven't seen anyone that's made them look godly, because the models just don't lend themselves to it. But then the bigger stuff in the army, like the trolls, I think look very nice, and there's definitely more to work with there. There are new plastic goblins coming as far as I'm aware though, so all is not lost. I want to go into painting something knowing that I can make it look really nice, and when it's a really mediocre model, like a lot of basic infantry have been over the years, then it's not that exciting. Steve loves painting simple stuff. You've seen my orcs, haven't you? I've seen quite a lot of your orcs, and I'm not sure whether I would describe everything you paint as simple, but you do seem to like pushing out a large amount of models rather than spending hours agonising over each one, which is a valid strategy when you're painting a Kings of War army. Okay, let's paint some beards. So I'm going to have to actually get the fine detail brush out, I think. It's the only thing small enough to get into some of the crevices that I need to. And I'm going to be using black first, because I spotted on the Overmaster there's an area of his beard that I haven't actually painted, because I didn't realise it was beard, I thought it was armour. So, black. There we go. Still waiting for my Vallejo paint rack to arrive, which is going to go over there on the wall that you can't see, right next to the desk, behind where the camera is right now. The camera here, right behind this one. Big paint rack should be able to hold all my paints and more, and then all the Citadel ones can just stay down here for now, because there's lots of space. It's just all these are starting to invade the painting area, and I need this space for other stuff. So, is there some black already on here? Doesn't look like it, so let's splodge a bit more out. Yeah, I don't think my Night Stalkers are going to be that complicated in paint jobs. They're going to be fairly simple, I think. The Abyssal Dwarves, each one has taken quite a long time by my standards. And going straight into another army afterwards, it's not usually my style to do another one so quick. But the fact that I'm able to do lots of weird and wonderful building and conversions with the Night Stalkers should give me the motivation I need, I think, because that's usually my favourite part, building the models. Not cleaning them from old lines, that's probably the worst part, but actually sticking the plastic together, cutting it up, making weird things out of it. That's probably my favourite step of miniature creation, from opening the box to putting it on the table. Probably my favourite part. Closely followed by the latter stages of the painting, I think. Once the end is in sight, that really fires up my motivational gland. Yeah, that's a phrase. Okay, blackness on the beard done. Let's check if these guys need any more beard blackening. Any gold maybe straight onto the beard somewhere? This guy actually needs some more skin applying, because I falsely assumed that part of his face was actually helmet when it's not. So I'm going to have to fix that. Probably the same for the other guy, let's see. No, this guy's fine. I don't know how this guy's beard manages to stay up at that angle. He must gel it heavily. Wonder if you can get beard gel in the Abyssal Dwarf Kingdom. You would think they would put their resources into more important things like building slave monsters and whatnot. But maybe beard gel is considered a priority in their plans. Steve really enjoyed making those skulks. Yeah, building models is a lot of fun. It's like being a child and putting Lego together, isn't it? There's a few models I've got lying around that probably aren't going to be got to for a while. For example, the Wingit. It's going to be a while before I finish this thing, I imagine, because I'm not planning to use the goblins in any upcoming games. But if I start getting them out on the table a bit, that'll give me the motivation to finish it. I've also got this Abyssal Dwarf Chariot, and this is just part of it, obviously, but there's the guy who sits on the back as well. But I don't really have the motivation to finish this right now, because I was actually building it as a special one-off model for an event which has been cancelled. So if that event next year is happening again and they use the same rules for the unique model, then I'll just continue with this project. I even bought the monster that's going to be towing it, but I'm not going to show you what that is because I wanted that to be a surprise for people when the time comes. So, what's now? We're going to need some grey for these beards as well. So we're going to start, you can see my beard painting process now. So it's black, then there's going to be two greys. We're going to have cold grey. Have I got another cold grey around here somewhere? I think I have. I'm not sure it's run out yet. There we go. Cold grey, not quite run out. And then, not white for the next step, but wolf grey. So it's almost white. And then on the special models, if it's just a one-off hero on its own, with a really big impressive beard, I will go for white after that. But none of these guys have sufficient beards to warrant that, as far as I can tell right now. When I start painting it, maybe it'll be different. But the way I'm going to paint it is paint very fine lines in grey on the beard detail, and then about halfway down, then go over some of that at the tip with wolf grey, so it looks like it gets lighter the further you go. Okay, let's dive in. Do we have any grey already on the palette? It doesn't look like it. So let's give it a good shake. See if we can squeeze some final life out of this before it gets replaced. There we go. Now I don't want to water this down too thinly, because it's going to be very fine lines I'm making with it. And I don't want it to run into the crevices on the beard. Usually getting into the crevices is a good idea, but not in this instance. So who shall we start with? Let's start with the guy whose beard defies gravity. Okay, I'm going to have to hunch over a bit to do this. Need very steady hand as well. And if I make any mistakes, I'll just have to be even more careful and go in and fix the details with black. Okay, let's see. Is that going to focus on the beard so you can see what I'm doing here? Go on, you know you want to. There you go. You get the idea now. Stripy. I think I feel another sneeze coming on. It was in fact a sneeze, but I managed to escape just in time. And then the moustache needs to be very fine lines as well. Even more fine lines, in fact. And I'm not bothered really about painting onto the actual lines of the miniature sometimes. As long as the effect looks nice, it doesn't matter if every single one of the hair strands that's sculpted onto the model is picked out. I'm not painting with the tip of a needle and a magnifying glass. As long as it looks good, I'll be happy. Okay, who's next? Deep in concentration. This guy's beard is barely visible through the armour, which is weird because he's the Overmaster. You would think he would want to show off the magnificence of his beard for all to see. But who's going to argue with him? Maybe he's got a tiny beard and he doesn't want anyone to know. Because he's the Overmaster. And that would bring shame to him. That could be a bit of backstory for the Abyssal Dwarves right there. A couple of disillusioned dwarves unhappy with the lengths of their beards went to set up their own clan. And they just gave the illusion of having long beards, and it's because they actually wear like beard wigs, fake beards that are all black and really long and curly to hide their own tiny little insignificant beards underneath. How does that sound? And that all their beards are black and the same consistency because they get them from some kind of creature that has curly black hair. They harvest the wool and turn it into their beards. How does that sound? I think Mantic should probably take that on board and put it into their next fluff book. So moving on to the wolf grey now. And this is only going to go part way down the hairs. It's very difficult to apply this to the moustaches, but I do attempt it each time. So obviously there's a high chance that you'll accidentally paint too much and just completely cover the grey that was there before, since you're working with such tiny areas. But worth trying, because when it works, it looks very good. To be very precise and careful. And don't try and touch the model with your first approach with the brush. Make the brush stroke over and over again, but without being on the model, and just move it a tiny bit closer each time until you're touching it. Top advice there, guys. There's a minor disaster there, but not really much of one. Just the two bits of this grey are touching each other a bit, so there's going to have to be a fine black line put on the beard between them. So just a small repair job required there. And onto the moustache. With just the tiniest dots. Okay, leave him there because he needs some more work in a moment. And onto the boss, who doesn't have much of a visible beard to work with, so he's not going to require much of this grey at all, actually. Mainly his moustache. And a little bit. Okay. So, it's a little bit too dark and or too light there, so I'm just going to dive in here and correct that. Okay, and now we've got some fine black lines to do. Where did I put the black? Perfect. And this guy wants a tiny black line in there as well. So I'm not sure if the Hellfane's going to be complete in time. If I can get it ready for the game on Wednesday, then I can definitely try to use it and get it out there on the table fast. That would be fun to have all the new models that I've got in that game. Obviously, I'm going to have to leave out some of the stuff I usually take. Since I'm only doing 1,500 points, and I've already got the Grotesques, Horde of Grotesques, and the Grotesque Champion to put in there as well. So it's going to be something very different to what I normally play. So, fine detail brush going away for the moment. How are we looking, guys? Looking pretty tasty. So that orange seems to have dried with the shade on it, so we can actually do the first highlight on that now. Okay, we've been going 1 hour 20, so won't be going too much longer here. Let's just swing this round so I can get to the orange easily, and we want which brush? This one. So, time to apply some orange, not in the crevices though. We're playing the crevice evasion game again. It's going to be one more highlight on top of this regular orange, which is going to be a lightened orange, not quite yellow. Just exaggerating the differences between the crevices and the raised areas. Okay, next. Bazooka, just got a second in between cooking and watching to say I enjoy the building most of all. When I'm painting, I want to get it finished without mucking it up. Yeah, that's a fair way of looking at it, I think. Certain parts of the painting I enjoy more than others, but assembling is my favourite part. Although some people are not fans of assembling miniatures at all, and they would rather someone else did that for them, and they just concentrate on the painting. There's something in the hobby for everyone, but that can also mean, because you have to go through various different stages to be considered a true hobbyist in some circles, that it's kind of a gateway and a kind of a what's the way to describe it? It's like a barrier to entry, then, is what I mean. Some people just like painting, but in some communities you might be frowned upon if that's all you do. Or if you're only a gamer and you take unpainted things to the table, that's definitely frowned upon in many circles. Not really, you've just got to do whatever you enjoy. And then if there's a stage that comes later, for example, if you want to play the game, but you don't want to do some of the stages before that, then there are things you can do. You can pay people to paint your armies, for example. Or you can just paint your army with contrast paints, which will get it done a lot faster. You can get it on the table with all the colours there, so you can't be looked down on and shunned by the community. Okay, there's the orange done for now. Do you tend to build the whole model and then paint, or do you usually do sub-assembly? It depends what the miniature is. So for the Hellfane, obviously I've left the crew off because it would have been quite awkward to reach the areas that they're standing on if they were right there, and it would be awkward to paint them. Most of the time I would say I assemble the miniature first. I don't put it on its base, at least in some of my armies. The Abyssal Dwarves, certainly, every single one of them I think has been off its base until it's been finished, apart from maybe a couple of individual heroes, but nearly everything has been painted separately and then attached to the base later, because the base is like a totally separate project. There's the Hellfane base, finished quite a while ago. Which models have I painted in sub-assembly apart from this one? Can't think of anything from a Kings of War army right now that was painted in sub-assembly. It's usually like the rider for a big beast I'd do separately, except with the Ancient Winged Half-Breed I didn't do that because that was a metal part and I wanted it all to be pinned together, and I didn't want to be pinning metal to plastic after I'd painted it because that would just cause all kinds of mess. So usually I just assemble the model first, unless there's something that I know is going to cause issues, and then I'll leave it separate. If it's something I'm building from scratch like this, then generally I'll just assemble all of it first, because it's just the fun process of building it. I'm not even thinking about how it's going to be painted at that stage. Usually just paint it all in one chunk. Sometimes I'll leave off a cloak of somebody if I want to paint their armour, for example, but I'm getting better about not doing that. More recently I've tried to just leave areas that no one's ever going to see, but it's difficult to avoid the temptation though, because if you know that behind that cloak there's no paint, it can gnaw away at the inside of your very soul. Okay, so with that orange done, is there anything else that I want to do in orange on these guys? I'm going to do black for the boots and the beard. No, the beards are already black, so I'm going to do more on the boots and the gloves and the belts, I think. I don't think anything else really needs to be orange. Does this guy need some orange on him? He doesn't really have any kind of fabric anywhere to work with. I don't think he really needs any orange. These two, like priests or whatever they are with their pistols, will be able to provide the orange on this thing anyway. I could actually, while I've got the orange out, I could do the lighter orange highlight on this, and then end the episode after that. Let's do that. So I'm going to get a smaller brush out for this, and that'll be the last step today. And I might do some more later off camera, nothing too fancy, and then hopefully I'll be able to finish them tomorrow and get it assembled maybe tomorrow night. That would be the dream. I'm not going to do any stages that you haven't already seen off camera though. So I might do some of the silver highlighting on these guys. So we need a small little fiddly brush. Not fine detail though, let's go for this one. Okay, so in order to lighten the orange, we've got a bit of white there, is that wet? Not really wet enough. And with white it's quite a thick, kind of pigmented kind of paint, so you don't want to be applying that when it's not nice and wet, because otherwise it's going to clump up everywhere. So let's splodge a bit of white in next to the orange. And give it a little bit of a mix. So, nice big blob of each there. And we've got a nice light orange for these highlights. Here we go. Going around all the little crevices. And the edges. Okay, almost done with this. Then we're on to the next guy. Okay, nothing too crazy. Let's see if it'll focus on him, so you can have a look at that. Not going too crazy with the highlighting here. Fairly subtle. Nothing too wild. Looks a lot more subtle in real life when you're not really zoomed in on it. And the brush has rolled away. Oh, there it is. And the same. Oops. Don't want that dark and orange. We want the nice mixed up lighter one here. If this wasn't on the wet palette, it would have completely dried up by now, this mixed colour, because it's very thin since I was splodging it all together. If anyone's got anything else they want me to mention or touch on or answer before I go, now would be a good time to drop it in there, because we're almost at the end of this now for the day. So don't forget, obviously, tomorrow is Tuesday, so it's the Andy and Room show at probably around about this time. But before that, I'm sure I'll be doing another painting video. On Wednesday, there may not be a live painting session because I'm setting up a game of Kings of War over webcam, so the cameras will all be occupied. Unless that game doesn't go ahead, in which case I probably will just do some painting instead. Getting a bit of the regular orange now on a bit that I felt was too thick. Okay, orange highlighted. Bazooka. The keys. Last few times I've painted, I tried white zenithal highlights over black primer undercoat, then that really helped speed things up. Part needed to be brighter light yellow, I dry brushed it with more white, then applied colours, thinned down, almost like washes. Yeah, that's a way a lot of people paint as well. It's not something I've particularly done, although a case could be made that some of my models have a similar kind of technique used on them. If you saw the way I painted the grotesques, for instance, that was a lot of dry brushing before washes were applied. So it's the same kind of idea. So if anyone goes back a few episodes and watches the entire grotesque painting saga, which took quite a long time, then we'll see all that in action. I assume, of course, people do watch these videos multiple times and go back and watch all 30 lockdown hobby times over and over again just to absorb all those sweet, sweet painting knowledge nutrients into your hobby bloodstream. So let's get the lid on the water, and time to end this one for the night. So don't forget to check out all the links in the description, obviously. Various social media nonsense going on down there, Twitter, my Facebook group, and so on. And you can use those to keep up with info on when the next video is and such. Don't forget to also look for the Andy and Rem Show Facebook group if you're interested in that, because there's a live show coming up tomorrow. And don't forget to like the video, obviously, subscribe if for some ungodly reason you haven't already. And there's also the various fundraising links down there if anyone wants to send me half their life savings in exchange for me providing this non-stop, endless stream, this torrent of red hot, sizzling, juicy, spicy, mouth-watering, ice cool, refreshing content directly to your face via the internet from the orange corner. Then you know where to click to help out with that. And I think that's everything. So, all that remains to be said now is good night out there, whatever you